All right, well, hello, good morning. Apologies for the late start this morning. It's a little chilly out here, and you might notice we are out here. We are in the aviary for today's virtual visit. As always, my name is Alex, and thank you for joining us again for another virtual visit live from the Alaska SeaLife Center. Now, we're out in the aviary today because we're going to be putting in this camera for a lot of it. We're going to be kind of taking a look at these critters here, but before we really get into it, let's thank our sponsors for the virtual visit. And as we are season public. Just take a look at our audio there. But I'm just going to have to hold the mic. Looks like all manner of issues in the cold. As always, thank you to Royal Caribbean Group for sponsoring this season of virtual visits. And we're going to take a look at our sunrise, as usual this morning, then we will get started on our program. So this is, again, from about 8:30 in the morning to 10:30 or so, and it's getting earlier and earlier each day that the sun is actually coming up, but we had some snow yesterday, we got a little bit of wind today, so hopefully it doesn't affect our mics too bad. And the sunrise is just a gorgeous sunrise this morning, but you can see it's starting to audio issues. No audio. Yes, audio now. I'm just going to hop on down here. And we're going to be a little closer to the camera for today. We're still on our sunrise, though, so just give us a moment. Yep. All right, so as you can see, I had to come quite a ways closer. It seems like we were having some audio issues. But no worries, because we're still going to jump on into that camera there and take a close-up look at scale sessions in the aviary today. So we're going to jump right on into that clip, and then we'll take questions afterwards. All right, so if you saw our previous bird programs with Laura, we saw what it took to sort of prepare food for the day for our birds. We saw that they have to come out and clean these aviary, or clean the aviary, clean these rocks. And now we're out here with a bucket of food that was prepared. We've got Laura again, yep, and Sean. And what are we doing today, Laura?
We are doing a scale session. Chewy is 10 40-inch Regatta Vitafish. So all these birds know to get on the scale first thing in the morning, and if they do, they get all the fish they could ever want. Tricks 480 and a Vitafish.
So that's all they're doing. They're just hopping up on a scale, and you give them a fish.
Yep. So the first fish that I give them is going to be, you might have heard, a Vitafish. So that has a little bit of a vitamin that's going to make up for any of those nutrients that might be lost in the freezing process for these fish that we're giving them.
Right. If you saw our program where we did the food prep, that Vitafish, the vitamin gets tucked kind of up in the gills there. We watched you do that. And so that's just to make sure they're getting stuff that they might not otherwise get from what we're able to feed them.
Yeah, so I know everybody based on the bands that are on their feet.
Okay.
So we have Portland here has a gray band on her left leg, and we also band them according to sex.
So they hop up, you know who they are. Sean's recording all this data, like you call out who it is, what their weight is.
Yep.
He marks it down. What's that telling you?
So it's going to tell me a couple of things about the general health of the bird. I can go back and look in their records because we keep these, and we can look at trends that are happening. So if all of a sudden Little Green's weight is a little bit lower than I'm expecting, I can go back and look at the historical trends. Maybe that's normal for about this time of year. And I can just look at that and know. Good job. Rex was 460 in a vita-fish.
So kind of just like a checkup, making sure that no one's losing weight unexpectedly or gaining weight unexpectedly.
Yeah, it's also a really good time. This is one of the times that they come up pretty close, so I can get an overall look at their overall body condition, their feet, make sure there's nothing new going on with any of them.
Okay. We've got some interesting coloration going on here because everyone seems to be kind of halfway into a molt.
Yep.
Is that breeding season coming up then?
Yes, it is. So we are in somewhere between spring and winter. We're in kind of that in-between season for a lot of these birds. So they're starting to change colors. Our ducks are a little bit further along, but they start courting and looking a little bit cuter than a lot of the rest of our birds do. So our puffins, our gulls, they're working on getting that really sleek, pretty breeding plumage.
Okay. Now with breeding season coming, I guess would you see a big weight difference when a female has an egg?
You can for sure. 450 in a vitamin for Hudson. So that's one of the things that I'll be looking at when these puffins are expected to have an egg is like all of a sudden she's gonna have quite a bit of a gram of increase and I'm gonna know that she's probably egg heavy. So that's something I'm looking for. So I can expect an egg to be in her burrow and I can also know if I need to handle her for any reason to be extra careful around her pelvis.
Right, you mentioned the burrow, and that's something we'll have to do an episode on at some point, is a lot of these birds are puffins. They burrow back into this cliff here, and so their nests aren't visible. So you'd see a female like, oh, they're heavier, they've got an egg, and then a little while later you'd see, oh, they're light again, they've laid that egg.
Yep.
Okay.
For sure. It's and you can actually sometimes, if you're really lucky, catch them in the burrow because it's a pretty big egg, so it's got to be pretty uncomfortable when it's coming out. So there definitely is a little bit of wrestling going on in the burrow when they're laying it. Scuttles was 330 in a vita-fish.
And this bucket, that's the food that we actually saw during food prep, where you make this is hypothetically what they get throughout the whole day.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is the diet bucket. This is what I have to work with throughout the day. If by one day they're like extra hungry, I can go pull a little bit more. And then sometimes in the summer when it's hitting for Alaska, pretty warm temperatures, like 80s, sometimes 90s, they're like, nah, I'm not really feeling it. Just like you or I, when it's like extra hot, we're like, maybe I don't need a big meal today. Doesn't feel great on the tum. So sometimes that'll also happen too, and that's fine. We've got Mr. Tony. He is $10.95 and a vita-fish. And so we also have nicknames for a lot of the birds in-house. So his name is actually Antonio. But Sean knows, I call him Tony all the time.
Yeah.
That's something that I have to remember, especially when I'm doing this with newer people. They're like, who is Tony? I'm like, oh, sorry, Antonio.
Now, everyone's kind of got their own name. And you mentioned you can tell who's who with the band, but how do they get their names?
So we have themes every year. This year it's fruits and vegetables. So we're gonna vote on which ones we like the best, and we kind of like go in, it's informal within the bird office that way. But yeah, there's themes every year that we kind of follow along. So one year we had rocks. So we have a shale, we have a basalt, we have a slate. So that's kind of like what we do from year to year. So we just pick a theme and we go with it.
Okay. Now, if they don't come up, I mean, like, would that be a sign of concern, or is this something where they don't always come up every day, or?
Depends on the individual.
Okay.
So sometimes if it's an individual who I know is like always here, always first one to the scale session, and there's like a few days in a row where it's like, where are you? What are you doing? That's kind of a sign for me to maybe go around the habitat, look and see what's going on. It could be that they're molting and they're just not into it. That's totally fine. But some of them just don't really come up, and that's also fine too.
Okay.
They're gonna get fed one way or the other. This is just one of their many options.
And is it easy training them this way, or would you say this is a difficult task for them to do?
So they definitely learn by seeing a lot of times, but training in a flock condition is always a little chaotic. So it's more challenging for me to make sure that I'm reinforcing the behaviors that I want. And then we've also got, birds are as smart as they need to be. So sometimes that can also be challenging to work around. Like you saw, the common murre was able to practice a little thievery earlier. So working around like those sorts of things can be a little challenging. But the birds themselves, they're pretty smart. So they learn by watching their older counterparts getting on the scale. They're like, hey, they're getting a heck ton of fish when I get up there.
Yeah.
Maybe I should try that too.
I mean, this is something, you do this every day when you can. I mean, obviously, you know, if it's sleeting in through the side there, you probably won't set up here. But
Yeah, if it's like extremely cold, we try not to because it's not very good for the birds to be out of the water. Chocolate is 980 in a vita-fish. So if there's like a kind of a lower level temperature that we'll go for, and then we try our best in the summer, but sometimes a lot of things happen all at once. But we have to get them done a lot earlier in the summer too.
I see.
Orlando was 10:30 in a vita-fish.
And sometimes if you visit the SeaLife Center, you actually see this happening, because eventually we're open pretty early.
Yep.
And so if you're ever here visiting and you see them over here with the scale and the birds kind of all line up, that's what's happening here. Oh, we've got some new residents here.
Yeah, we're trying really hard with these spectacled eiders. They really like the hooligan, and that's kind of like my currency with them right now, but they haven't quite figured out what I want from them. They're almost there. It's frustratingly close.
Anyone who watched our behind the scenes last week, we talked about the eider lab here with our spectacled and Stellar's eiders.
1020.
2 spectacled eiders have been recently added to the aviary. So who are these 2 then?
This is Poe and Alcott, and they are a little bit of bullies when we bring out the hooligan. They'll kind of shake you down for it. So I'm really trying, because I know that she likes it a lot, to feed her over the scale and kind of encourage her more and more. But it's hard with her. She wants it, but she's a little nervous.
Try to, I guess, have them relate the scale to food, and then they become more comfortable with it. They're like, oh, this is a good thing, and eventually they'll learn that, hey, I just have to get on the scale.
Yep, for sure. But as you can see, she's her own bird.
Yeah, no, she's not really feeling like getting on the scale.
She is definitely her own bird, but that's what I'm doing right now, is I'm only gonna feed her over the scale.
And here comes Poe.
He's a curious little critter. He's also known for bucket diving. You've done that on me a couple of times, where he just helps himself to the fish in the diet bucket, which is not good manners, mister. But I'm also holding the fish in a specific way, because sometimes the kittiwakes like to swoop down.
Right. I mean, they're usually our most flighted bird, I would say.
Yes, and that is something that they do naturally, is they swoop down at the fish on the surface, or steal from other birds who have fish on the surface. So that's a natural behavior from them, but it's not something I like to encourage during a scale session.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks for letting us tag along on this. It looks like it's slowing down a bit.
Yeah, we've got Madame Dory making her way up, so we'll give her a minute. She takes a minute or two. She's got a little bit of arthritis. So you might have heard earlier, I gave one of our other birds a medfish before I gave them a vita-fish. So we also do give them medicine at this point in the day too, if we can. So they've got like a little supplement that's got some cosequin, which you might give to your dogs or your cats. It's just a joint supplement for some aches and pains they develop as they get a little bit older. So Miss Dory has some of that as well. And that's why she's just taking her sweet time, but she's also Princess Dory, so.
Easier to float than to walk around for a puffin.
Yep, 7:35. Oh no, you don't want it, because you know. Oh, gross. Oh, you pick it up on your own though, okay.
Oh, there you go.
Sometimes they just want to pick it up on their own just to show me who's boss.
Right. And also knowing, you know, like you said, she knows, right? We have to trick them for their meds. If you've ever had to give a cat or a dog medicine, you have to kind of trick them, put it in something. And we saw you prepare the vita-fish. I assume it's similar for a med fish.
Yeah, so it's got like whatever medication down in the gills or up the vent, just basically in the fish, hiding it a little bit. That was rude.
Yeah, the kittiwake tried to come down and steal, just like you talked about.
Yep, so that's one of the things. That's why I was holding the fish like in a specific way, is because I know the kittiwakes like to do that. You can do it, baby.
Good bird. She took her medicine.
Yeah, she did. She's very good about it. Sometimes it just takes some convincing, and she definitely has to show me it was her idea, not mine, which is fine.
There she goes. I enjoy they get on the little trampoline there and kind of hop on up from there.
Yeah, so we've tried many different ways over the years. Some people we have a ramp, but it's not my preference. I like the trampoline. It's something they're already used to, but it gives them a little extra lift off the ground, so they don't necessarily have to jump as high.
Right.
And sometimes, especially when they're going through flightless periods, they don't really want to make that little extra effort, which is totally understandable. Here you go. He's starting to try and bill stack. That they just don't have that extra lift in them. So we give them a little help. Oh, you dropped it. You keep dropping it, kiddo. You can bill stack 1, 2,
So what's bill stacking?
Bill stacking is how they hold their fish in their mouth. They'll hold them, if they're really good at it, sideways, but we have a couple kids who are working on that right now.
Okay.
And they'll hold multiple in their mouth. But they're gonna hold quite a few fish, and they'll actually take them back to the burrow to feed their puffling, whole fish from pretty much day one.
So that's coming up then with breeding season. They're going to need to be they take them back whole. They don't regurgitate like a gull might or something.
Our puffins do not regurgitate. They take the whole fish.
The whole fish.
So they like these little ones, these silver sides.
Okay.
They also, in the wild, would take sand eels, which kind of are a bit thinner than this. They look like little noodles.
Little noodles. And so they'll take this back, and the chick has to swallow them whole then?
Yep.
All right.
So they're gonna have that yolk sac in their belly for the first 24 to 48 hours, but then after that, it is mama and papa's job to make sure they're getting enough nutrition to keep growing.
And so then, if you've got parents taking care of a chick back in the nest, for these scale sessions, do you see them show up and like take a bunch?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We will also specifically feed them. So we'll come out in the morning with a bunch of the fish that they're gonna want for their baby, and we'll target the parents.
Oh,
and
just give it to them,
Mm-hmm.
Make sure they get it.
And then we'll watch them and make sure they're taking them back to the burrow.
Okay.
And we also do weigh those pufflings, especially for the first week of their life, to make sure that they are gaining their weight in a way that we're gonna be expecting.
Okay.
Nemo, welcome. 565 and a bite of fish for Nemo.
So I noticed Nemo doesn't even have any bands, but you must just know, like, oh, if it's a horned puffin without bands.
That's Mr. Nematode.
There you go.
So Nemo has a history of the leg that we would band him on, sometimes swelling, and we just know that. It's an old injury that flares from time to time, so we don't put a band on it, but he is the only horned puffin without a band.
All right.
So that's Mr. Nemo. He's one of our education kiddos, so we might know him even still, because some of our education kiddos, they just have like this certain way about them that you can tell.
All right. Seems like kind of a lull. So thanks again for letting us tag along and see how this works. And a reminder, if you ever visit us and see this happening it happens every day.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks a ton. We'll head back to the floor, and I'll see you there. All right. Well, we are back, and hopefully our mics are working. Now, unfortunately, we wanted to take you back there and do one live, but we have anticipated perhaps there'd be some issues today, of all days. So we did have that scale session earlier in the week that I was able to do with Laura.
Yep.
And so we had some questions while that was happening. We'll answer those questions for you. I know there was a couple. I did see two on there, I think from Almighty Float, asking, have we ever had a bird from the aviary, like fly away from us and become a victim of hunting? And no, we don't release the animals from the aviary here. So that hasn't been an issue. There was also a question about whether or not we've treated animals with hunting wounds or with gunshot wounds. We have treated animals through our wildlife response program. Now, thinking back to our wildlife response program episode, our virtual visit we did with wildlife response, and unfortunately, I think we really only focused on the mammals in that. Those tend to be what we get and what we have for releases, but we do get birds through wildlife response, and we have had birds come in with, like buckshot and that sort of thing. So we do see that, and we have treated animals for that. Any other questions?
Yeah, Margaret said, I'm surprised they wait their turn to get on the scale. Do you have to train that, or was that one bird at a time a natural behavior?
Okay, well, we'll put up the loop there of the scale session going on, and we'll answer that question. So they're really well trained, Laura, is something they noticed, and they kind of wait their turn. They hop on up. I mean, do you have anyone you're working on with it right now? I guess the eiders.
Yeah, the eiders are definitely ones that I'm working on with getting them to know, hey, you get the fish when you're on the scale. We are at the point where they know kind of that they get the fish over the scale, but they haven't quite made that leap, the next connection that I want them to hop up on the scale. But I also tend to not feed when there's more than one bird on the scale. So that's reinforcing those good manners you guys were just talking about. Because I can't get accurate weights if everybody's hopping up on there at one time. So that's something that we're also reinforcing, is one bird at a time on the scale. So
You can see the eider coming in on the side there.
yeah, he's being a little bit of a sassafras over there in the corner. If you could hear the audio, I don't know if you guys have it. But,
Not on this, no.
Oh, he's definitely making a lot of noise, a lot of chatter at me, a lot bop, 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 bop. He wants all that. He wants the hooligan I have in my hand, or the capelin
Well,
right
there
there.
you go, and you got to kind of push them away there. But I mean, I guess that's how you train them, right? Is that you, and we saw it in the main clip, you sort of held the food like over the scale
Yeah.
and got them to where they had to like really stretch. So at some point, maybe they'll be like, the scale's not scary, it doesn't do anything while I'm eating, and it would be easier if I just got on the scale.
Yeah, so a lot of birds will also learn by watching. So that's another thing you saw right there. I'm trying to get him to kind of connect. I want him on the scale, and I don't want him stealing from me. Right now, because he's one of our bigger birds out on habitat, managing that can be a bit challenging, as you saw. He's got a nice long neck and a good reach. So figuring out the ways to hold the fish to reinforce the correct bird is also one of the things that can be quite challenging.
Yeah, you got to hold it so others don't steal it.
Yep.
So we had a question actually, while the scale session that we had earlier this week was going, they wanted to know the species as they sort of hopped up on the scale here. So maybe we can go over some of the species.
So,
and they're going to look different than you might be used to.
Yeah, we're in
breeding.
a transitory time right now. So
Yeah.
somewhere, we have a beautiful common murre on that picture. He's the guy who kind of looks like the penguin. He is actually in full breeding plumage pretty much right now. So he looks like he will in the summertime. We also have a guillemot that's thinking really hard about getting on the scale, not quite sure. Oh, the common murre stole it from him. But that guillemot is definitely in midway between summer and winter, breeding and non-breeding plumage, basically.
They're usually very stark black and white.
Yeah, they're like basically a smaller version of the common murre in the summertime. But one of the notable differences, other than size, is that white wing bar you could see that guy had there in that picture. And on the scale now, we have a tufted puffin. He is working on growing in those tufts. That looks like Mr. Diego. And here is a horn puffin. They're actually going to be going through what is called a catastrophic molt in the next couple of weeks here. So please excuse any little ragged feathers here and there. He's about to go and lose all of his flight feathers. So he's working real hard on being super cute for the summertime. Yeah. And then the gulls we have that you've probably seen here and there are actually red-legged kittiwakes. So those guys are really kind of cool birds here. They're probably the rarest birds in the aviary, even though a lot of people are like, did you mean to have seagulls in here? Yes, yes, we did. Those guys you'd find out in the pribilabs, really. You wouldn't find them pretty much anywhere else.
No, we have their cousins, the black-legged kittiwakes out in the bay, but not these bright red-legged kittiwakes.
Yes, so that's one of the main differences is those bright red legs, but they definitely have the short little stubby neck and the cute little tiny beak there, and lots of personality. You can see that guy was definitely talking and was ready for his time on the scale to shine. So that is actually Scuttles.
Scuttles.
Right there. And Scuttles will lose that grayish patch on the back of his neck, and that is one of the main ways that they molt into their breeding plumage, is they just get a little bit sleeker.
Okay. So we had a question here then. As to whether they ever really overeat or if they get sick if they eat a lot. We mentioned that they don't regurgitate the food back to the babies, but do they ever just like get so stuffed full that they'll regurgitate, or?
Not really.
No?
So regurgitation is usually a stress sign.
Okay.
They do have a pouch in their neck called the crop.
Okay.
So when those birds are swimming through big schools of fish, they're going to be able to hold a lot of fish in there to make that one opportunity that they might have like for quite a long period of time really worth it. So sometimes you'll see when they've got like their crop pretty full, they're kind of gonna like readjust their neck.
Yeah.
And that's them moving those fish around in that crop. It's basically like, you know how a hamster stuffs their cheeks full of food? It's the same sort of mechanism.
But
for
it's
these
down
birds.
in their neck.
Yeah, it's in their neck. So you'll even see like when we have a couple of known birds who like to be little piggies, they'll get like a huge little spot on their neck.
Yeah.
And they're just stuffing that full of all of that food. But yeah, that's really what they're doing with that. And then it'll move on to their digestive system after that. But it's this little storage pouch that they got.
Overeating, not too big an issue there, though.
We have a couple of birds who can go on some diets from time to time.
Yeah, and how do you, so then is that something that you specifically watch how much they're eating, or?
Yep.
Okay.
So we're going to look at their weight on the scale.
Right.
And we definitely know what is and is not a healthy weight for these birds. Some of them are going to just be heavier than others just because that's just their natural like bone structure.
Yeah, yeah.
But we can look back at our records from year after year and look at the trends. And each bird can have a different set point for healthy weight.
Yeah.
But definitely when we've got a horn puffin that's pushing like tufted puffin weight, we're like, maybe time to like ease back on those high fat items.
So you can watch that through the scale session as well. And then in the clip we also mentioned that we're coming up to breeding season. So at some point you'll notice, oh, she's got an egg, because there's that weight change.
So that's going to be a different sort of a thing. It's not like, so when they get a little bit higher in weight, just naturally when they're being a little overeating, maybe it's a little cold or something, or they're just that's their personality. They really like the potato chips that we've got, the hooligan. Then that's kind of a slower progression over time. Okay. The egg is going to be like within a couple of days, like all of a sudden, oop, we put on a couple of grams here, like 10, 20 grams, all of a sudden just shoots up.
And we've got a loop actually of the vita-fish being made, because that's another thing that you do. Make sure that they get this, make sure that they're getting their vitamins and eating that.
Yep, and that's also something, since we're talking about chicks and babies, we do give the babies, they'll start on vita-fish, but they'll start on like a half tab every few days. They don't get the full tab. When they're super tiny, we work them up to that. But yeah, this vita-fish is just something, that's the first fish I'm giving them when they're on the scale, and that's just gonna have a little extra nutrients to help support any of the things that get lost in the freezing process for our fish, and it also helps them support those nice tufts growing in and all of the feathers.
And then we saw also like you making medfish, for example.
Yes, so we have a couple of kiddos who are on medfish right now. Right now, it's not really anything intensive. It's just some cosequin, so a joint supplement that you might give to, my glasses are fogging up, it happens. They might give to like your dogs or your cats. It's actually the same sort of thing. It's just supporting those guys who are dealing with a little bit of arthritis from middle to old age, basically.
And we might try and get a scale session in live again. We'd love to do one where we're out there and if someone has a question about the bird, or because you can ID the birds, maybe like as each one hops up and be like, oh, here's a little whoever. So we'll try and do that, but things are going to be getting busier in the aviary going forward here, and that's because we're getting close to breeding season.
Oh, it's coming around the corner fast.
And that's a busy time for y'all.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and there's a lot of work to be done. First of all, we'll probably do an episode about the burrows. So back in the cliff, of course, there's the burrows. Those will be getting opened up, or are they already open? It doesn't look like it.
No, they're not open yet. There's rock stuffed in the entrances on this side, just because the kiddos don't need to get into that sort of trouble. It saves a lot of cleaning and a lot of headaches on the keeper's side, because we do have to clean the other side of the burrows too. So that's kind of, it's not in their natural history to be on land looking to be in a burrow. So that's kind of what we're doing here, is we're supporting the natural cycle that these birds kind of want to go through. That's really my goal, is to anticipate the next thing that they're going to want from me.
Yeah, I brought up the breeding season because in the background, I'm not sure if our mics have been picking it up at all, but every once in a while there's little duck calls going on. So we've got a long-tailed duck out there making noise. The eiders aren't really making too much noise yet, although I've heard them some mornings out here.
They've been doing it off and on. I think they just might be a little camera shy right now. But yeah, the ducks are definitely already in full breeding plumage, because they just start that courting a little bit earlier than our alcids do. So if you guys see them in the background or on any of those clips, you might notice those guys looking a little bit sleeker, a little bit fancier than a lot of our alcids, brighter colors right now for the males. So they're going to be they're practicing looking real cute for the ladies.
So yeah, coming up, hopefully we'll be able to do some stuff about the breeding season here. And if anyone has any questions, if there's something you forgot to ask, or you just didn't get it in, obviously you can text us as well at that number that we display at the beginning of these programs when we're live. But if we got any questions there that we didn't get to, we will make sure we can answer those. And if you leave a comment or you email us, you can also email Ask Tuffy, that's ASKTUFFY, at alaskasealife.org. And that brings me to probably the last question here. Someone asked, where's Tuffy been? And Tuffy is, of course, our mascot here at the SeaLife Center, I suppose. Out and about, sometimes you will see a tufted puffin, unlike our other tufted puffins, in that they've got a name tag. Sometimes Tuffy even has like a tuxedo if it's a very special occasion, and that would include the Marine Gala that comes up every year, and we do that here. It's a fundraiser, and in fact, this weekend we're going to be doing it here at the SeaLife Center. So you can tune in for that. A little bit of fundraising, a little auction. It's virtual this year, just like last year. So that's something to tune in for. And then next week, I think we're going to be hopefully taking a look at some lab work here at the SeaLife Center. If you tuned in for our behind-the-scenes tour, I don't know, a couple episodes back, we actually talked about the central lab here, the lab that we have where they can do blood samples or look at water quality. So we're going to take a look at that. And we hope to see you for more virtual visits. We always want to thank our sponsors before we sign off here. And this season of our virtual visits has been made free to the public by Royal Caribbean Group. So thank you again to them. And thank you, Laura, for being out here in the cold weather.
Well, I'm out here either way.
You're out here either way, I guess. Thank you for just standing here instead of spending time with your awesome birds. And thank you for taking us along on that scale session.
Yeah, not a problem. Hope we can do it live next time.
Yeah, we'll try and get one out there live so we can meet everyone up close. But thanks to everyone that tuned in.
See ya.